And a very pleasant good evening to you. I am Biff Kensington, and you are tuned in to the last call, the Queen City Express. We'll be going live here in just a moment, but I want to take a moment to welcome everyone that will be coming in late or streaming this after the fact. This is a brand new feature that the Queen City Express podcast group is being put out. I'm going to be flying solo tonight. Got a live link up to cage side seats, so if you come in late, please enjoy yourself. We're going to have a good time tonight. This is the very first edition of The Last Call. It's going to be a bit different from the usual podcasting format that we'll be using on the Queen City Express. Going to be flying solo most of the time, although we may have some special guests come in here or there. Basically, it's just a nice, gentle conversation, looking at some different wrestling news, both past and present. Also, got some interesting information on some trivia challenges that we've got coming up for you. Taking a look at some of our featured matches on the WWE Network in a special segment that I like to call the WWE Network Match of the Week. We also have a couple of questions submitted from a couple of local supporters of the podcast. For future reference, if you'd like to have a question answered on the podcast, feel free to get a hold of me at Cage Side Seats. You can also reach me on Twitter at RealDealBiff, DILL for deal, because of course I am a deal. We also have a couple of other tidbits to cover. It is WrestleMania week officially, and a very happy Easter Sunday as well to those who celebrate. So it's a fun time here at the podcast. It's going to be a great night. So sit back, relax, enjoy yourself, and we're going to go ahead and jump right into it. No telling how long we'll be hanging out tonight, but I'm sure it'll be a fun time. And as part of the last call, one of the things that we're going to be doing is providing kind of a little mix list, a kind of a brief little summation of some topics that are kind of operating out in the ether, discussions that are being had in other parts of our little community at Cage Side Seats. And got a couple of points I wanted to talk about tonight, things that are going to be prevalent, especially as we get closer to WrestleMania. Tonight's mixed list, sponsored by the Queen City Express. Our natural podcast date should be some point in the near future, whether it's Wednesday, Thursday, or Saturday. We'll figure that out. I want to extend my deepest appreciation to everyone that has been supportive of the podcast so far. On behalf of my co-host Ryan Sayo and myself, I just want to let you know that I very much appreciate it, and we hope that you enjoy everything that we put out in the weeks to come. We do have another live stream scheduled. Should be dropping some point Wednesday afternoon. It's going to be a little bit hectic, trying to get all of our travel arrangements finalized, so you'll just have to bear with us on that, but we will be going over the full WrestleMania card. Also, if you didn't catch it later this week, I'll be dropping part 2 of a special fan post series I'm doing, The Man of a Thousand Words, looking at the top 10 WrestleMania matches that never were. Tonight, the first installment dropped with the first 5 matches on the list. If you're interested in some reading material, you can go check that out. There's also some interesting fan posts out there. Please always support Cage Side Seats and all of the great content that gets posted in the fan post section and on the main website itself. Some lots of good stuff there for you to check out. Wednesday, we'll be dropping part 2 again, the final 5 matches on the list, along with our full WrestleMania 34 preview. We are going to New Orleans, in case you haven't heard, and we'll be making some guest appearances on podcasts in the weeks to come to talk about those live experiences. And I will go ahead and tell you this. We do have a special feature that we're going to be trying out. We're going to see how it goes. It's the Ultimate QCE Trivia Challenge. So here's how it works. Each episode during the last call, we're going to pose a trivia question to you. It'll be asked on the air. Those that email the correct answers to me, Biff Kensington, will be entered into a special drawing that'll take place in the weeks to come. Prizes will be varied depending on which drawing is taking place. But if you answer the question correctly, doesn't matter if you're the first person or the 50th, you are entered into the drawing. And this time's prize, this particular challenge's prize, is going to be coming direct from New Orleans. It's going to be coming from the Superdome at WrestleMania, so that'll hopefully give some enticements for people to jump in and participate with us. Really just trying to have some fun, and as we talked about this morning on the Shooting Debris podcast, we just want to kind of champion wrestling history a little bit, get people to kind of explore all of the splendor and majesty of WrestleMania season. looking back through the history books, taking in some matches on the network, and just really appreciating the history of the business. There is so much awesome content out there from the network to YouTube, all different companies producing amazing programming right now. We just really want to celebrate wrestling, and that's partly what we want to do here with the Ultimate QCE Trivia Challenge. So stay tuned a little bit later in the podcast tonight. I'll be giving you the first trivia challenge question. All you have to do is answer one to win. Anybody could win. It's a wide open field, so good luck to everybody, and I hope to see you participating there. Let's dive right into the mixed list. And our first topic tonight: should both WWE women's title matches be on the main card in New Orleans? This is going to be a very tricky little part to uh, see how it plays out, because honestly, with 14 matches on the card, it's going to be awful hard for every match that deserves to be on the main card to actually get on the main card. Uh, there's a few matches, obviously, that will be on the main card. Both top championship matches will be there. You can only assume that John Cena and The Undertaker will be there. And you would have to guess that Charlotte and Asuka would be the preeminent women's title match on this card. It's certainly been built up to be the biggest of the two that will be taking place. There's some uncertainty over whether one or both of the battle royals will be shunted to the pre-show. And if both are going to the pre-show, will one of the women's championship matches wind up on the pre-show alongside them? I don't think Charlotte and Asuka would be a contender for the pre-show, but Nia Jax and Alexa Bliss very well could. Now, there is a rumor going around that The Rock will be making an appearance in New Orleans next week. It could be interesting if they want to do something special for Nia Jax. You could see The Rock show up to celebrate a title win. That has not been confirmed, nor is it, really been discussed as a possibility. But I do think it would be an interesting little twist. It would definitely make Nia Jax's title win, if she is in fact destined to win the Raw Women's Championship, feel that much more special. So we'll see how it goes. I think it's going to be interesting to see how it plays out. I definitely think one, if not both, of the women's title matches will be on the main card. I do believe, though, if there was one at risk of being moved to the pre-show, that it would be Nia Jax versus Alexa Bliss. Just wanted to make a quick comment before we continue on the mixed list to a comment in the chat. I will be giving out the email address during the trivia challenge itself. However, if you have questions for the show for the next episode, or if you just have any personalized comments, you can reach us. biffkensington2018@gmail.com. That's the official email of the show. And also, you can also tweet on the Twitter at Real Deal Biff. That's Real DILL Biff. That's where you can find us on Twitter. Ryan Sayo is an old fogey. He does not have Twitter, so we're using this one pretty much as the Twitter feed for the show. But that's how you can get your answers in. Please do not post your answers in the live chat, obviously, because then anybody could get it, and the trivia contest would be pretty much just a grab bag. I want to reward loyalty here for people that are listening. And plus, it's more fun if people have to actually work for the answers. I know on the internet you can look up answers, but that's part of the joy of the trivia challenge itself. It's not that these questions are impossible. It just rewards people that listen. Shameless plug, but indeed, it is a nice plug, I think. Back to the mixed list now. Let's go into our next topic. What match should close out WrestleMania 34? This one is going to be a fascinating topic to see discussed in the week to come. I know a lot of people have put money on Roman Reigns versus Brock Lesnar for the Universal Championship. I would not be surprised in the least if that match closes out the show. And that would be a very fascinating choice by WWE. I think it would say a lot about their willingness to put the Universal Championship as the preeminent title in the company. If you were able to catch our show earlier tonight, Ryan Sayo and myself were talking a bit about the Universal Championship and some of the problems that the WWE has in establishing the Universal title as a top-level title. Quite frankly, compared to the WWE Championship, you're never going to match the history or prestige of that belt, at least not in the short term. There's just too much history with the WWE title to even compare it to the Universal title. But also the Universal Championship not being on television regularly, and never having seen former champion get a rematch for the title has also hurt its credibility a bit. It makes it out to be a title that people just don't care that much about. Finn Balor only held the title for one day, had to relinquish it, was never actually beaten for the title, and you would figure when he came back from injury that he would be gunning for that championship. And almost a full year on now from his return from the shoulder injury that he suffered in that Universal title match, he hasn't gone after it yet. So it's very, very interesting how they've booked the Universal Championship. We'll have to see if it improves once it's on TV weekly. Roman Reigns and Brock Lesnar is a very solid choice to be the main event, given the amount of time they focused on that match on Raw. The SmackDown side of things, I don't know that Shane McMahon and Daniel Bryan would main event. Shinsuke Nakamura and AJ Styles have a potential to main event. The WWE Championship is the most historic title in the company, and it does really sit well from a historical perspective to have the most prestigious title in the company main event WrestleMania. There are some people who believe that WWE may sidestep the controversy over which title match should close the show by running the mixed tag match as the main event. Now, I don't know that that's a very good idea, simply from the perspective that we don't know what we're getting from Ronda Rousey. Triple H and Stephanie McMahon and Kurt Angle, even though he's dealt with some injury problems since his return, you kind of know what you're getting from them at this point in their respective careers and their respective paths. Ronda Rousey is an unknown quantity. She may be tremendous. She may be terrible. It may be an epic match. It could be an epic car crash. We just don't know. The uncertainty of it from a qualitative standpoint would tend to make that kind of a dangerous proposition to let that go on last. But at the same time, if they want Ronda Rousey to be one of the preeminent stars in the company, no better way to make history than have Ronda Rousey be one of the first women to main event a WrestleMania, which is another subject we're going to be talking about here shortly. I think, honestly, the best way to avoid any controversy, and everybody assumes this match is going to be finalized Monday, it's all but guaranteed now. If John Cena and The Undertaker are wrestling in New Orleans, I really don't see any other match that should go on after that. Say what you will about The Undertaker and his physical condition, or John Cena and his stature right now, the angle has left a lot to be desired for some people. Others seem to like it. Wherever you tend to fall on the spectrum, you can't really argue that John Cena versus The Undertaker isn't a marquee match. A lot of fans seem to want the match. I personally am looking forward to it. I'm a big Undertaker fan. This will be the first time I've gotten a chance to see The Undertaker at a WrestleMania, so it's a big moment for me personally, and I know a lot of other people that are going to New Orleans that feel the same way. So if that match does indeed take place, and it would seem to be a 99.9% lock that it will, I could easily see that match being the main event. And that might be the best choice for a main event in terms of helping to avoid some of the controversy that may come up from a Roman Reigns Brock Lesnar main event, which poses a number of problems, not the least of which could be a toxic crowd. We don't know how the crowd is going to react to that match. And quite frankly, Roman Reigns, having main evented 3 straight WrestleManias, it might be time for someone else to get a shot at it. You never know. But it will be interesting to see what the WWE does decide to do. Moving on in the mixed list, will we see a contender for the greatest WrestleMania match of all time in New Orleans? In other words, will we be talking about a match from the card next week as being one of the greatest WrestleMania matches we've ever seen? When you judge matches qualitatively, it's a very subjective thing. No one person is going to have the same exact standards for judging a match as another, but there are matches that are in the conversation that most fans would generally accept being greatest WrestleMania matches of all time. Of course, we're looking at matches like Macho Man Randy Savage defending the Intercontinental Championship against Ricky Steamboat at WrestleMania 3. A lot of people like to point out Bret Hart versus Owen Hart from WrestleMania 10. The latter match from WrestleMania 10 gets a lot of love. Shawn Michaels and Razor Ramon. People that came of age in the Attitude Era may be quick to point out Bret Hart versus Steve Austin from WrestleMania 13, or Austin and Rock, any one of their 3 matches from 15, 17, or WrestleMania 19. People today that are newer fans can point to Daniel Bryan in the main event of WrestleMania 30. That's a seminal favorite for a lot of people. WrestleMania 25, Shawn Michaels and The Undertaker. That gets a lot of love. There's a lot of matches that kind of enter this conversation. And on paper, I think we have a couple of matches that could, in fact, uh, enter that lexicon. It could enter that conversation when all is said and done. This is one of the most loaded WrestleMania cards on paper that we have seen in a very long time. And even though the build to some of the matches may not have been optimal, you definitely cannot say that the WWE has not put on a card that appeals to a lot of different people. There's a lot of diverse interest in this card from a lot of different people. One of the big matches I think that everyone has been looking forward to, Shinsuke Nakamura versus AJ Styles. If history is any indication, that match has the potential to be one of the greatest. If you ever seen their interactions in New Japan, you know the kind of chemistry that these two performers have. I think it's a very safe bet that they will be in contention for match of the night, barring any unforeseen circumstances. Quite frankly, this might not be a popular opinion, but their first match in Santa Clara was an amazing match in and of itself. I think Brock Lesnar and Roman Reigns could really surprise some people, especially if they had that knockdown, drag out type of brawl that I think they're building towards with all of the beatdown segments we've had the last couple of weeks. I guarantee you that Charlotte and Asuka have a chance to put on what could go down as the greatest match in women's division history at WrestleMania. Both women have the in-ring talent, they have the story on their side. I am a huge fan of the story they've been building up to. As we talked about earlier today, it's classic wrestling 101. Strong champion versus strong challenger. Only one can reign. Let's see who the best really is. It's the story they're telling. I'm so happy that they're getting such a prominent place on the card. I think that match could be historic, and we'll just have to wait and see how it goes down, whether we could get a cash in from Carmella. We don't know when the briefcase is going to come into play. So there's all sorts of little stories kind of lurking under the surface there. We could see something really special out of the SmackDown Women's title match. One match in particular that may shock some people. And if you are a regular viewer of SmackDown, I think you know exactly where we're going to go with this. We're talking about the SmackDown Tag Team title match. The Usos, the New Day, and the Bludgeon Brothers are looking like they're going to have a triple threat match, and it may be a TLC match. That's the rumor that's been floating around. Apparently, there was some sort of announcement that was accidentally leaked, which indicated that, in fact, that match will be a TLC match. A lot of people have pointed out that there's an awesome tie-in this year with the Dudley Boys going into the Hall of Fame. It'd be a great little nod to them to have a TLC match. I'm not so sure that we will get a TLC match, and the only reason I'm unsure of that, it does seem a little weird to have a six-man ladder match at TakeOver and then do a TLC match the very next night. But if we do, in fact, get a TLC match, I think that match could be absolutely fantastic. It could surprise a lot of people. It could be one of the most impactful matches of the night. It's going to be a great match for the Usos. I think this is finally the year where they get on the main card. The New Day, of course, will be making their return after not competing last year. They were acting as the hosts. And the Bludgeon Brothers have really been coming on lately. I've been more and more impressed with their heel work. Just a good, old school, classic monster heel tag team. The dynamic is there. All three teams have a lot of talent. They all work really well together. The story that they've been building up is really fantastic. I think that it's going to be one of the matches that surprises a lot of people. So we'll just have to see. I think we have a lot of possibilities on this card. The Intercontinental title match should be a good match. Finn Balor, The Miz, Seth Rollins. The in-ring talent there is incredible. We have so many other matches to talk about. Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn against Daniel Bryan and Shane McMahon. It may not be the best in-ring match, but quite frankly, it could be the most emotional of the matches, the entire card. Daniel Bryan returning to New Orleans, the site of his greatest triumph at WrestleMania 30. Shane McMahon can get it done in big matches, although we are waiting to see about his physical health. Will he be able to participate at the card? Right now, it's kind of up in the air. Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn, we know what they're bringing to the table. Two of the best in-ring workers that SmackDown has. This storyline has really turned a lot in the last 2 weeks with the announcement that Daniel Bryan was getting cleared. I think a lot of people have gotten way more excited for this feud since it became known that Bryan would be wrestling and wrestling at WrestleMania in New Orleans. And so we'll see if that match can live up to the hype. This card really is just hot fire. I cannot say enough good things about it. And TakeOver the night before is no slouch either. If you were able to check out our podcast earlier this week, our debut episode of the Queen City Express, we broke down the card, talked a bit about some people that we thought might be getting a call up after WrestleMania. It really helps make this year really special for the fans because there is so much uncertainty, so much possibility and potential, not only in the card and in the show that follows it, but, honestly, just looking ahead at what the company could be doing with their call-ups. It's going to be a fun ride. It's a great time of year for wrestling fans. WrestleMania week almost never lets you down. And, of course, we've got Raw and SmackDown coming. We could get some final surprises for the show. And, of course, we'll be getting a few surprises at the show. That seems to be one of the common themes at WrestleManias of late. I'm going to be there live. I'm hoping it's a good show. It's going to be a long show. It's 7 hours. That's the latest rumor. So, I might be clinically deceased by the time it's over or qualifying for senior citizen discounts, but we'll see how it goes. It should be a fun card. Looking forward to talking with you more about it in the days to come as we break down the full card that will be coming this week. Just like to welcome everyone in on the live chat. We got a couple of people watching now. Had some people drop in and out. Thank you for tuning in. We're just about through with our mix list. We're going to be going now to the Ultimate QCE Trivia Challenge. If you are just joining us, or if you catch this later on and need a refresher, here's the drill. You take the challenge, you answer the trivia question, you submit the correct answer to the email address that I'm about to provide, biffkensington2018@gmail.com. That's how to enter. It's really simple. If you get the question answered correctly, you enter the drawing. After a couple of weeks, we'll be holding the grand prize drawing. The winner will get a special prize direct from WrestleMania at New Orleans. Got some souvenirs that we're going to be giving away as prizes. Just as much a thank you for listening to the podcast and, being a loyal listener. We just want to encourage people to stick with us as we kind of work through our different issues, technical issues, and just get the hang of this. People have been so nice, so I want to give it back to you a little bit, kind of say thank you to some of the supporters that have really been helpful in getting this podcast off the ground. Tonight's trivia challenge question. It is a fill-in-the-blank question. So you take this, you get the answer emailed to the email address we provided just a moment ago. If it's correct, you don't have to do anything else. We'll be in contact with you if you win the drawing, but you will be entered to win the prize. And we'll be doing different prizes every couple of weeks. It won't just be a one and done. If we get a good response, we may do it more frequently. If not, we may do it more sporadically. But we do want to reward people for listening. Here's your first trivia challenge question. Fill in the blank. Boston, New York, and Philadelphia were to the WWF what Little Rock, New Orleans, and Tulsa were to blank. That question again. Boston, New York, and Philadelphia were to the WWF what Little Rock, New Orleans, and Tulsa were to blank. If you send in the correct answer to biffkensington2018@gmail.com, you are entered to win a special prize direct from WrestleMania at the Superdome in New Orleans. Good luck to everyone that enters this week. We'll be giving you more information on the drawing in the weeks to come. I want to give some more people a chance to kind of get in on this, but hang in there. The prize will be worth it. It should be a lot of fun, so enjoy playing, guys. We want to dive right into the main feature of the last call, and that is called Saturday Night's Main Event. It is the topic that we were spending the most time on, the topic that is probably one of the most interesting. This time we got a doozy of a topic. I've been looking forward to talk about this ever since we started building up the podcast. And it's quite frankly a topic that has major ramifications, not only for the WWE, but for pro wrestling in general. That is the topic of tonight's main event. Should WWE move to the Fox network in 2019? As many of you know, the WWE is entering into contract negotiations beginning as early as May 2018. So, just about a month from now, WWE will be entering contract negotiations. And one of the pressing rumors that has been floating out there online is that the Fox network is looking to make a play to get the rights to WWE programming. WWE's television rights belong right now to NBC Universal and the USA Network through next year. If I'm not mistaken, I believe through September of 2019. I could be mistaken on that. I'll do some research and clarify. But definitely in 2019, the networks that WWE is on could change. The television rights will be coming up. Uh, Fox has apparently entered the picture as a player, and a lot of this is dependent on Fox's relationship with the UFC. The UFC is also going to be exploring their television options in the months to come. Their rights also come up. And if Fox is unable to secure UFC to a new contract, WWE could be a very valuable alternative to the UFC. It's actually quite interesting. If you're a longtime wrestling fan, or only even if you've been a wrestling fan for 5 or 10 years, you've kind of gotten the impression that the UFC has almost taken some of the shine off of the WWE. It's definitely become a very big, very lucrative institution. Its existence as a quote unquote legitimate sport has definitely given it a leg up in terms of respectability among casual fans. But it is important to note that WWE actually has some degree of leverage in television negotiations. UFC is very much a pay per view driven business model. They need their pay per view revenue to really succeed. Their television revenue is not really the core of their product. WWE, on the other hand, has really made television rights fees the central uh, carrot that they chase after. Pay-per-view business used to be very big for the WWE, but in the network era, getting subscribers to the network, sacrificing some of the pay-per-view money to try and establish their own network in-house, it's really made the television rights money very, very important to the WWE's bottom line. And quite frankly, given the increase in advertising revenue that WWE has seen over the last 5 years, it makes them much more attractive to potential network partners than they were the last time their contracts were coming up for negotiation. If you remember, the last time WWE tried to negotiate new TV rights deal, they actually settled for less than they were hoping to get, and it caused a bloodbath on Wall Street. WWE stock took a major hit when the new television deal was announced. That may not be a problem in 2019. WWE and Fox, it's a very interesting partnership. On the surface, it may not make a lot of sense, but here is why Fox is so intrigued by the possibility of getting into bed with WWE. And it comes down to one key word: content. WWE can produce an enormous amount of content. And in this way, they have an edge over the UFC. The UFC's television product has always kind of been accoutrement to the overall UFC package. It's just kind of there to entice you into buying pay-per-views. WWE puts all of their eggs into TV now. It's all about giving fans a robust TV experience. That's why we have such high attrition rates in matches. You'll see them over and over. It's because they're trying to pump as much out of the feuds on TV as they can. WWE can produce far more content, far more effectively, and cheaper than the UFC can. And that's very valuable to a network like Fox, who's trying to get content not only for their network, but more importantly, for their sports networks. FS1 and FS2 are still under the Fox umbrella for the time. And if they can get a SmackDown, which averages between 2.2 and 2.8 million viewers, depending on who's coming back at a given week, that looks very attractive for a cable network, especially a network like FS1 that needs solid live programming. That's what's going to make FS1 an attractive option for advertisers. It's going to make it an attractive option for cable providers that carry the network. You get good live programming on your channel and you're going to succeed. They tried a business model focusing mostly on talk shows. Skip Bayless and Uh, I cannot even remember his name now. Skip Shannon Sharp. I don't even remember. Shannon and Skip do their Undisputed show. Calvin Cowherd has a show on FS1. They tried a model of talk shows. They were trying to pattern after ESPN. Didn't really work out in the short term, but getting live sports rights is a big coup for them. The Fox network has got Thursday Night Football TV rights coming. If they can add WWE to the package on Monday nights, that would be big. The thing about Monday Night Raw is it would be moving to the USA Network. It would be moving from the USA Network to the Fox broadcast network. It would be moving from cable to broadcast TV, which would be a first for WWE. It would be a huge feather in Vince McMahon's cap to get Raw onto broadcast television. That's something that he's wanted to succeed at for years now, even going back to the early days of Saturday Night's Main Event. He loves the idea of being on broadcast TV. It's something that really serves as a status symbol for WWE. And so, I think that it's going to be interesting to see how those negotiations play out. Vince McMahon could be sitting on a fortune here. Fox could be paying a lot of money for these television rights. Really, they need something to replace UFC if they're not able to come to terms with the company on a new TV rights deal. Now, if Fox does work out a deal with UFC, then it's all hands on deck. That could be a disastrous occurrence for the WWE because it would severely limit their negotiating power when they have to go back to USA Network or if they try to go to ESPN. There's been some talk that ESPN could be in the market for some live event programming. That would probably be putting Raw on ESPN2. I can't see them supplementing or supplanting Monday Night Football with Monday Night Raw, but we'll see how it goes. Uh, just want to check in on the chat here. Looks like we got some people talking. Roundhouse Wrestling, I'll get to your question here in just a second. Daniel Ryder, and it's also a question, can Fox get the same block commercial fees NBCU has worked out for USA and Raw? That's a very interesting question. We were looking at the ratings breakdown when the news first broke that Monday Night Raw could be going to the Fox broadcast network in a potential move. It was very interesting because Raw's ratings, though they're very good for cable, they really don't hold up well to most properties on broadcast television. 2.8 million viewers to 3.5 million viewers. That's pretty good for cable. That generally puts Raw in the top tier of cable for viewership. On the networks, the broadcast networks, that's not exactly a number that you really strive for. It's a little bit low on the low end for a broadcast TV property. But you also have to consider two variables. Fox does not have a very strong Monday night lineup. Their shows generally don't do that well to begin with. But also, too, you have to consider that Fox is banking on maybe getting a few more viewers for Monday Night Raw if it's on broadcast TV where more people have access to it. You also have to consider the fact that Fox wouldn't be incurring some of the hassle of operating costs since WWE would be pretty much handling that aspect of the show. And it's content every week of the year. 52 weeks a year, they would have a new episode of Monday Night Raw. That is something no other network is going to be able to really duplicate, even if they have another sports league come on. No other league runs year round. And no TV show is going to run year round, not like that at least. You're never going to be able to avoid the problem of reruns. WWE would give Fox live, brand new content each and every week. So that would definitely be a bonus for Fox. But also, you have to consider as well the potential, and this was just brought up in the chat, about whether or not Fox could get the kind of ad rates that NBC Universal is getting. That's a very good question. I don't think we're going to know the answer to that until we see how things play out. I definitely think that WWE's sponsors, the partners that they have now, would probably move with them. I don't think it's tied into NBC Universal specifically. I think that they do have some partnerships that are kind of using the NBC Universal relationship. They're just kind of piggybacking off of it. I don't think that their relationship with KFC, for instance, would end if they moved to Fox. I think that would transfer. You could have a whole other range of advertising opportunities on broadcast TV that aren't available on cable. There's really no way to know until it actually happens. It'll be interesting to see how that plays out. Want to go into another question that was asked, roundhouse wrestling. So Biff, you've kind of inspired me to do this kind of thing where I just talk about one topic for 10 to 30 minutes or so. I should do one tomorrow evening, probably around 7:30 or 8 Eastern, maybe. Okay, that's awesome, dude. I'm glad that I can inspire you to do that. Also, Daniel Ryder, quote unquote, SK, good to see you here in the chat. I'm going over some of the notes that I left out for the show, and I'm also trying to follow the chat as it's going on. Uh, Kudos to the people that have the ability to talk and read at the same time. That is not as easy as it sounds, but I will try to be peeking into the chat every once in a while. See some good conversation going on. I appreciate you guys hanging out with me tonight. Uh, it's going to be interesting to see how that breaks down, whether or not WWE should move to Fox or not. I think there are pros and cons to the move. I do believe that the benefit of a 2-hour show cannot be understated. If the WWE does indeed move their television properties over to Fox, Raw would go back to being a 2-hour show. They're not going to clear out the news block that they reserve at 10 for their affiliate stations. Raw would go from 8 to 10 p.m. There would be no more overrun. There would be no more third hour. That in and of itself is probably enough for most fans to be excited about the move. We'll see how it works out. There will be increased scrutiny on WWE if it goes to broadcast TV. You're going to be putting yourself out there against the networks to get some major shows that air on Monday nights. So WWE, if they want competition, they're going to have it. They're going to step up big time, going from cable to broadcast TV. And Fox is definitely going to want to see those ratings tick up if at all possible. The higher the ratings go, the more respectable WWE programming is, the more they can work their PR magic, get some new sponsors in, increase the value of the sponsorships time that they do sell. It's all about the money from advertising. When the controversy over the Fabulous Moolah Battle Royal broke out a couple of weeks ago, it wasn't WWE being altruistic in changing the name. It was fans reaching out to sponsors. You hit WWE in the pocketbook, and that's going to get Vince's attention. The sponsors are everything in a TV-driven model. And so it's going to be very fascinating to watch that play out. Again, qualitatively speaking, 2-hour Raws are enough to get me to sign off on the move. If they don't move to Fox, I think their best bet would probably be sticking with NBC Universal. Better to deal with the devil you know, the devil you don't, that kind of deal. I think with ESPN, there's too many variables to that kind of move. Plus, you're also opening the door for conversations about someone buying out WWE outright. That's an entirely different tangent that's kind of floating around in conjunction with the talk of a move to Fox, whether Fox would buy WWE outright. I've seen some people that have kind of, shunned that talk, and I don't know that we can actively rule that talk out just yet. And I will say this reason in defense of that point. Vince McMahon has been striving to get the XFL project off for at least 12 to 18 months by his own admission. He really wants the XFL to work. He's putting a lot of capital into it this time. But also, I think, Vince McMahon at this point has done so much with WWE, selling it all for a hefty profit and then moving on to football or whatever other avenue. That is something, honestly, I could buy Vince doing if Vince is in fact embarrassed by being a wrestling promoter. Now, that is a very controversial topic. A lot of people would disagree with that assessment. Even I am kind of calling it into question whether Vince is embarrassed by being a wrestling promoter. I don't know that he's so much embarrassed by WWE or being associated with pro wrestling, but I do think that Vince craves mainstream success in something other than WWE. We've seen this over the last 15 years with the advent of WWE Films, the film studio division, trying to increase WWE's capacity to produce entertainment, not just through their wrestling programming, but through movies, some of which are wrestling themed, some of which are not. Uh, Operating different properties like the old WWF restaurant in Times Square. There used to be a retail store in Niagara Falls that they operated. The original XFL was an attempt to diversify the portfolio, so to speak. Of course, the famous WWE themed casino that was going to take shape out in Las Vegas would be another glaring example of Vince's desire to diversify. I think if the right price were to come along, Vince would sell. And I'm quoting Vince McMahon himself on that very point. He gave an interview several years ago. I believe it was in Rolling Stone. It could have been in Sports Illustrated. Can't remember off the top of my head. He did say, it might have been actually Forbes now that I think about it. He said that he would be willing to consider selling the WWE if the right price came along, if the right buyer came along. And honestly, at this point, I don't believe that we're going to get a better scenario for WWE to be sold than Fox. Fox, having sold out so much of its properties to Disney, really leaves the door open for Fox to be looking for new properties to add. If they enjoy the content WWE provides them in a hypothetical move, you could see Fox put in a bid, especially when it comes time for renewed contract negotiations. And two, you also have to consider that Vince McMahon, you can never really guarantee what Vince is going to do. I think Vince McMahon himself would be willing to admit that he is very much a spur of the moment kind of guy. If it takes Vince's fancy, if the idea of selling for 2.5 billion or $3 billion, which could very well be market value if negotiations heat up, what somebody might be willing to pay for WWE, given the amount of content they produce. They are probably more valuable a television property than UFC for that very reason. You never know what can happen. I have been a wrestling fan all my life, and I would definitely tell you this: expect the unexpected with WWE and Vince McMahon in particular. You can never count out anything. Just when you think that somebody is going to be blackballed for life, they'll come back. 10 years ago, I never could have imagined Jeff Jarrett being in the Hall of Fame. Never could have imagined Randy Savage being mentioned so favorably on WWE television either. So you never know what's coming from WWE. I think people are a little bit quick to presume that WWE won't be sold or that Vince always wants the business to be in the McMahon family. It's possible that he does, but it's also possible that Vince could see a golden opportunity to be something more than just a wrestling promoter. I don't think we can dismiss it out of hand. It's going to be awesome to see this play out. It's always fun to think about what could be coming because it really shows up in WWE's programming. I don't think there is any ambiguity in why this year's WrestleMania card is so strong. From the return of Daniel Bryan, the appearance of Ronda Rousey, two championship matches that both have a lot going for them. The size of the card, John Cena and The Undertaker in a dream match that's been wanted by the fan base for a long time. This card is really put together to provide a little bit of something for everybody. It's not just appealing to casual fans. It's not just appealing to hardcore fans or online fans. It's got a little bit of something for every fan in the WWE universe, and that is not an accident. This card is so strong because Vince McMahon and the WWE wants to put their best face forward for when TV negotiations begin here next month. It is absolutely a carrot that's being dangled in front of their possible network partners. It's going to be very interesting to see how much money they do end up making off of their next television deal. I do imagine it will be for a pretty penny. It'll be a little bit more than what they're making now. But that is great news for a wrestling fan because they're going to be putting all hands on deck coming in the weeks to come. They want their best foot forward. And so I think that means the quality of Raw and SmackDown are going to see noticeable improvements. That's not always the case post WrestleMania. Several years now, the post WrestleMania doldrums have been very real and been very painful. Lest we forget last year, the post WrestleMania season wound up producing WWE champion Jinder Mahal. I don't think a majority of people listening to this podcast at any one time are going to be thrilled with a repeat of that particular event. Got some interesting NXT call-ups that could be making a difference. We'll have to see where they go. We'll have to see what the title pictures are going to look like post-WrestleMania. Having the Universal Championship on TV every week, that's going to be a big thing. Going to be interesting to see where they go with Roman Reigns. Got Braun Strowman waiting in the ring, waiting in the wings. Seth Rollins looking very strong. Finn Balor could be walking out of WrestleMania with the Intercontinental title. There are so many exciting possibilities. You can hear it in my voice. even this late at night on a early Sunday morning or late Saturday night, however you prefer to look at it. It's just an amazing time to be a fan. I'm so excited for it. I hope you are too. WrestleMania is going to be pretty awesome this year. Looking forward to diving into that card a little bit more on Wednesday. We'll see what happens with a possible move to Fox. I think the odds right now are very good that we could be seeing a change. We could be seeing a change of networks for WWE in 2019. I really do believe that if I had to put money on it right now, WWE would be moving to Fox. That is just kind of the impression that I've gotten. And I say that if no other reason, the rumors have never really gone away. They've always been lingering. And I think if there were anything to quash those rumors, it would have already, come out. There would have been some report that USA was making a serious play. I say we'll try to keep those rights at USA Network. NBC Universal would have just as much to gain by keeping WWE programming for the same reason that Fox would want them. It's a very interesting topic. Looking forward to see how that plays out. And we'll keep an eye on it. Anything breaks in the next couple of weeks, we'll be sure to report on it here at the Queen City Express. Well, I want to thank you for tuning in tonight. Of course, if you were going to participate in our trivia challenge, we look forward to hearing some of your answers on that one. We do have a feature that we want to talk about. It is the WWE Network Match of the Week. Now, this is a personal pet cause of myself and a few other posters. Taker's Minion from the Shooting the Breeze podcast. I'm sure that he's going to enjoy this segment as we kind of establish this podcast format out. What we really want to do with the Network Match of the Week is to get people invested in old school wrestling. I was surprised, being a relatively new import to Cage Side Seats, I was surprised to find out how young some of the posters were. A lot of people have jumped into watching professional wrestling only in the last 5 to 10 years. And I think for a longtime fan such as myself, I first started watching the summer of 1989. I was a very young fan. I was 4 or 5 years old when I really got into it. I remember waiting for WrestleMania 6 to arrive at the house. My grandfather was taping it for me, and that was in 1990. So that gives you an idea of how old I am. But I think a lot of longtime fans or older fans can lose sight of the fact that not everybody jumps in from childhood. Sometimes people jump in late. Some people are still teenagers at Cage Side. I mean, there's a wide gap in the different ages of the posters, and so it's just kind of interesting to see the dichotomy of mindset between younger viewers and older viewers, or viewers that have not had the level of experience with the product that some of us have. For people like me who've been watching for years and years now, longtime fans of the Territory era, even, it's really important, I think, that we, help younger fans appreciate just how much quality content is out there. Just watching some old promotions, Mid-South, Mid-Atlantic, the Jim Crockett promotion area, even some of the newer stuff like Smoky Mountain Wrestling. It is an acquired taste. I will give you a fair warning if you've never checked out Smoky Mountain Wrestling. But even some old WWE content back from the WWF days, as it was known back in the ye olden days. Just going back and finding some hidden gems that are on the network, I think, is excellent. One of my favorite match types as a longtime wrestling fan is a steel cage match. I am a huge fan of steel cage matches in general. I always have been. A little bit about me. I followed a very rigid birthday tradition for years as a child. Every year, my birthday would involve, at some point, going to Blockbuster Video. Yes, I am old enough to remember video stores. And a video every year. It was the only time of the year that I was able to get this video release. It was an old Coliseum video release from WWE back in 1986, Inside the Steel Cage. Love steel cage matches. They're excellent. Even today, when we get a steel cage, it gives me kind of a rush of nostalgia. One of the best steel cage matches on the network, though, and this is our match of the week, and I want to point your attention to this, especially if you've never seen it. If you go into the network archives and you pull up Starrcade 1985, you will see a match between Tully Blanchard and Magnum TA for the United States Heavyweight Championship. It is an I Quit match that takes place inside a steel cage. If you have never seen this match, I urge you, please go and watch it because this is one of the most brutal matches that you will ever see. And I'm speaking of someone with experience watching the IWA death matches from Japan. I've seen a lot of OG ECW, and I've seen plenty of street fights from the NWA as well. I also lived through the Attitude Era, so I have a lot of experience with violent matches, but the visceral nature of Magnum TA and Tully Blanchard, it just really sets that match apart, I think, from so many of the other worthy contenders for most violent match ever. It's not just violent content for the sake of violence, though. I want to make that clear right now. Magnum TA and Tully Blanchard had an amazing feud over the U.S. heavyweight title through the latter half of 1985. Both Magnum and Tully arrived at Crockett Promotions in 1984. Both men were established to be very important players for the company. Tully as a heel, Magnum is what would have been one of the top baby faces in the company. Of course, if you're a longtime fan, Magnum TA's career came to a tragic end in 1986. He was involved in a very serious car wreck here in Charlotte that ended his in-ring career. He was supposed to be a NWA World Heavyweight Champion. As a matter of fact, he was probably winning the title from Ric Flair at Starrcade in 1986. But in 1985, Magnum, one of the most popular acts in the company. Tully Blanchard, one of the most hated heels. If you've never seen Tully Blanchard work, it's impossible to really describe how much of a jerk Tully Blanchard actually was. And unfortunately, that kind of jaded a lot of people's opinion on him backstage. He apparently was not a very popular guy to work with, but be that as it may, he played a jerk heel very well. Just a little bit of background on this match. Tully Blanchard won the U.S. heavyweight title from Magnum TA, who had won the title earlier in 1985 from, I believe, Wahoo McDaniel. I'll have to verify that again. We do know, of course, Tully won the title from Magnum in July of 1985. They would feud for the rest of the year. It culminated at an I Quit match at Starrcade. Of course, Starrcade was the WrestleMania for both Jim Crockett Promotions, the NWA, and later WCW. So if you listen to some old-time fans that were griping and complaining about WWE's version of Starrcade being a house show, that's why Starrcade used to be very much the WrestleMania for the NWA. It was that level of a super card. And of course, it predates WrestleMania by 2 years. Starrcade debuted in 1983. WrestleMania wouldn't have its first edition until 1985. And so, you could really make the case that WrestleMania drew a lot of inspiration from the original Starrcades in Greensboro. Magnum and Tully culminated their feud inside the steel cage in an I Quit match. If you've never seen it before, I'm not going to give away the ending. I will say, as a longtime fan with more than 30 years of experience watching wrestling programming, it is by far one of the best commentary jobs you will ever hear. Bob Caudle, who was on commentary for that match, along with, I believe, Tony Schiavone, who was working with him. That match was absolutely fantastic in and of itself, but Bob Caudle and Tony Schiavone really sell the emotion of the match. The finish, quite the graphic, violent little finish. So if you're squeamish of blood and or sharp objects, you may want to exercise a little bit of caution. But Starrcade 85, the I Quit match, that is definitely worthy of our Match of the Week honors. You never seen it, go check it out. It's about 10 to 15 minutes in total. It doesn't last too awful long. But you'll be glad you did. It's a great match. It's a great fight. And it gives you an idea of the passion that fans used to have, that visceral, really hardcore nature that existed before hardcore was a thing in the 1990s. It's also one of my favorite matches, if for no other reason than they make the best use of a microphone as a weapon that you'll ever see in wrestling. Just look out for when the chair gets involved. You'll understand why that's a problem. after you watch the match. But enjoy that one. It's going to be the match of the week. Magnum TA versus Tully Blanchard in the I Quit match from Starrcade 1985. You can check that out on the network. We'll be doing matches like this every time on the last call. Just trying to get you a couple of matches that I think you'll enjoy, whether they're famous matches or hidden gems. There's all sorts of content on the network that you could check out. So be sure to stay tuned in the future for more little hidden gems that you can check out. We are going to be wrapping up here shortly. I do want to thank everybody that's jumped into the live stream listening. I want to thank in advance everyone that will be listening in the future. Appreciate you spending your Saturday evening with me here on the last call. I do have a couple of questions that were sent in by some local supporters. And just as I want to thank everyone that's been supporting the podcast at Cage Side Seats, I'd like to thank a lot of friends that have been supportive of the show here locally. This show has really taken on a life of its own. It came together so fast, but I'm so very pleased with how it's developed. Just want to thank everybody that sent in questions. Have two questions that we want to talk about tonight from two very close friends of the Queen City Express podcast. From John Combs, here's a question that was emailed to us just a few hours ago. Why did Steve Austin lose the title so much during the Attitude Era? Stone Cold was the most popular guy on the entire roster back then, but he never seemed to hold the title for more than a couple months at a time. It's a very interesting question, and it really depends on who you talk to as to why Austin would drop the title so frequently. He won his first WWF title at WrestleMania 14 against Shawn Michaels. Of course, a lot of people know that match. Very famous match with Mike Tyson involved. It really helped turn the WWE's fortunes around during the Monday Night Wars. He wound up losing his title to Kane at the King of the Ring in 1998. Now, if you've never seen King of the Ring 98, that's a very historic show. The main event between Steve Austin and Kane, very underrated, kind of gets forgotten a little bit because of the match that preceded it, which was, of course, the famous Hell in a Cell match between Mankind and The Undertaker, where poor Mick Foley takes a tumble off the top of the cage. It goes through the cage after the fact. How he didn't die, nobody will ever know, but thankfully Mick is still with us here among the living. He probably took a few years off of his life in that match. If you've never seen it, by all means, that would be another match to go search out if you want a good violent brawl. But King of the Ring 98, a very historic show for multiple reasons, not the least of which Austin did lose his title to Kane, but he wound up winning it back the very next night. It is very interesting to note how that did come about, if for no other reason. That title change was apparently just to have a title change, just to kind of hot shot and get a good rating the next night. That was a very common theme during the Attitude Era, hot shotting titles. And it wasn't just the WWF title during 1998 and 1999 that would change on the regular. Intercontinental Championship, the frequency with which it changed hands would increase. European title especially had lost a lot of its value after Bulldog left in the wake of the Montreal Screwjob in 97. That title began to change hands more frequently. Hot-shotting titles kind of became an art form for WWE under Vince Russo, but it was all about Crash TV. There's really no other way to describe it. The title changes were generally done for the sake of generating interest on TV. It's important to understand, the mindset that was going on with creative at that point in time with the company. It was a different era. That kind of hot shotting would be frowned on today. And in general, it probably did more to hurt the titles than it did help the product. I definitely think the Attitude Era, the excesses of the Attitude Era, definitely had long-lasting ramifications that we can talk about on different shows, later shows. But generally, that's probably why Austin's title reigns were as short as they were. It was just a matter of hot-shotting title changes to pop a rating. It's important to recognize that Steve Austin, between 1998 and 1999, he would win the championship both years at WrestleMania. He would wind up losing that championship several months after the fact, but he always seemed to win the title back on a Raw. In 1998, the night after King of the Ring, he wound up winning the WWF Championship back from Kane 24 hours after losing it. In 1999, he wound up winning the WWF Championship from The Undertaker on an episode of Monday Night Raw. And I remember that episode very well because it took place right here in Charlotte, and yours truly was there live. So, yes, I have seen a WWE Championship change hands. But, that was just the way they did business. They wanted people to watch the television product. Having a world title match on television back in those days was a special thing. Having the title change hands, even more special. So that's pretty much why they would move the title like they did. It was never any problem with Austin. It wasn't any backstage issue that Austin had. It wasn't like they were punishing him for any reason or anything of that nature. It was really just a creative decision to try and get more interest in the TV product. Thank you, John, for that question. Very good question. Also, my best friend, Eddie Vandal Mose, thank you for sending this question in. I owe you one, pal. Why did WrestleMania 4 and 5 come from the same city 2 years in a row? Was there any particular reason that the WWE went back to the same place twice, 2 years running? Yeah, the money. Basically, the money involved was just too good for Vince to turn it down. The people that were in charge of organizing the pitch for WrestleMania 5 through the Trump organization made just such a compelling offer to Vince that he couldn't turn it down. Originally, if you read some of the history books that the company has put out with some of their corporate insiders about the history of WrestleMania, Basil DeVito, I think is the name that might resonate with longtime fans. He put out a book a couple of years ago about the history of WrestleMania from a backstage perspective. They were talking about moving the show around every year after they had gotten WrestleMania established, and the people from Atlantic City put together an offer they just couldn't refuse. If you'll notice, at WrestleMania 5 in 1989 was really the first year where they really had a big fan festival type presence surrounding WrestleMania. There was the famous Bagels, Biceps, and Brunch that made its debut. I'm not sure if it was still called that in 1989. It might have had a different name, but it was kind of a breakfast that they organized, a 5K run that's quite famous for the segment that actually aired on WrestleMania 5's broadcast with Mr. Fuji running the 5K in a tuxedo. I always remember Bobby Heenan talking about that with Gorilla after the fact. So, and Jesse Ventura too. So, WrestleMania 5 was kind of unique in that way. It really had some increased fan interaction as part of the event. It was kind of a forerunner to what would happen later on, particularly WrestleMania 10, where they had a big fan festival for WrestleMania, and of course now fan access. That was, it's inextricable from the WrestleMania experience now. Fan access, the Hall of Fame takeover, WrestleMania week in general, especially through all the specials they run. It's just a week-long thing now, and really that wasn't ordinarily the case for the older WrestleManias. WrestleMania 5 had more of a fan vibe to it. Didn't exactly endear quality to the show. Atlantic City was not the best of locations for WrestleMania, unfortunately, and the simple fact of the reason is it just really wasn't WWE's traditional fan base there. You had a lot of people from the casino that were coming in. It was just something to do. And, if you rewatch WrestleMania 4 and 5 on the network, you'll notice the crowds are not really into it all that much unless there were some big stars involved. Just wasn't a very good atmosphere. It's a very weird atmosphere, too. WrestleMania 4 and 5 have a very distinct look. For nostalgia purposes, it's interesting, but I wouldn't say it was the best venue for WrestleMania, to be certain. There is some interesting tidbits, though. Around the time that WrestleMania 5 was settled on in New Jersey, coming back to Atlantic City, it's interesting to note that the owners of the Los Angeles Sports Arena and the Los Angeles Memorial Coliseum were attempting to get the rights to WrestleMania 6. I did not know this until this week. Good friend Angle, you know him as Angel, at Cage Side Seats in the nightly threads, he produced a link to an ESPN article that kind of detailed this. You could probably find it if you search ESPN's website. But Did not know this. Apparently, Los Angeles made a strong push to get WrestleMania 6 into the Los Angeles Memorial Coliseum. Now, longtime fans will recognize the irony of this. WrestleMania 6, of course, emanated from the Sky Dome in Toronto. That was the scene of the Ultimate Challenge in 1990. But on the WrestleMania 6 broadcast, Vince McMahon produced commercials, and I think it aired at least twice, uh, promoting WrestleMania 7 taking place at the LA Memorial Coliseum. The goal that Vince had in mind was to promote a show that would draw over 100,000 people to WrestleMania 7. He was completely wowed over by the pitch that the people from Los Angeles made to him. And so, even though WrestleMania 6 was settled on for Toronto by the time the pitch was made, WrestleMania 7 was open. That was the show that Vince wanted to really promote. He began promoting WrestleMania 7 a year in advance. And this was before the days where they would announce the next year's WrestleMania location as part of the WrestleMania festivities. So this was very much an unusual thing uh, for the WWF to do at the time. Of course, if you're a longtime fan, you know the story of what happened. Basically, WWE programming went into the tank in 1990. Ultimate Warrior did not do very well as champion. Business really dried up. It was very much the end of the golden age. A lot of people have nostalgia for 1990 WWE, myself among them. That's what I first came of age on. 91, 92, and into 93 is still considered the Hulkamania years. But honestly, the golden age ended in 1990. That was when business really started taking a nosedive. And frankly, there just wasn't enough interest to fill the LA Memorial Coliseum. Now, rumors have persisted for years that there was a bomb threat. This was during the first Gulf War time period. Security was an issue for the Super Bowl that year. It's detailed in the article from ESPN I mentioned earlier. That has never really gained a lot of acceptance among longtime fans. It was kind of a convenient excuse. I think Bruce Pritchard might have said it best. He said there was a bomb threat, but it didn't really matter because there was no way that WWE was going to sell out the Coliseum in 1991. It just wasn't feasible. Uh, so yeah, as far as WrestleMania 5 goes, it was simply a pitch that the people in Atlantic City produced that really enticed WWE to come back. They really made it worth their while. Even if the events weren't a qualitative success, they were definitely a monetary success for the company. Uh, it is kind of interesting to look at kind of the backstage maneuverings that are going on with WrestleMania locations. Of course, today, people from different cities bid on WrestleMania. It's a huge economic impact for whichever city lands it. I think to the tune of 100 million or more in money that basically lands in a given host city from everybody just coming into town. And I'll be contributing some money to New Orleans this week as I join our group that's going this year. So I'll be a part of the success for New Orleans. But thank you, Eddie, for that question. Looking forward to getting Vandal on the show. He is a huge wrestling fan. He'll be going with us to WrestleMania. He was kind enough to send in a question tonight. So thank you, Vandal, for that. Again, if you have any questions that you want answered here on the last call, you can reach me at my email address, biffkensington2018 at gmail.com. Be sure to send in your trivia answers to that email address as well. Twitter, Real Deal Biff. You can find us there. Of course, you can find me at Cage Side Seats on the regular. I try to get in to both the daily and nightly threads these days. So if you have any comments, be sure to check us out. Looks like we've been running for about an hour. This is the fourth or fifth podcast in 3 days that I have produced. And so I do think I'm going to go ahead and ring the last call now. We're going to call it a show, I think. If you've been joining us for the stream, thank you so much for listening. If you stream this later, again, thank you for taking the time to listen. It means a lot to me, guys. It really does for your support. I want to thank you personally. Too many people to thank, really, for the time period that we have left. But definitely be sure to check out all of the great content from Cage Side Seats this week. It's going to be a fun week, guys, with WrestleMania right around the corner. We're a week away. This coming Sunday, WrestleMania 34 finally drops, and so it's going to be a great time. Looking forward to reporting on it live. Definitely check out all of the podcasts off the top of my head. Metal Match, Ruthless Aggression podcast, Ambrose Alley. They should be bringing their podcast back this week, I believe, was the last word I heard on that. So looking forward to seeing if that's able to get back. Of course, Shooting Debris, Saturday mornings. Definitely check that out. Good friends, Taker's Minion, and Dr. Sinju do an excellent job. Had a great time on there this morning, so thank you guys for having me on. Definitely be looking forward to getting back on. If I do remember correctly, it is a special start time for the Shooting Debris podcast next Saturday. It'll be 10 a.m. Eastern, not 11. So if you make it a point to join in at the live chat for those podcasts, it will be a special start time, so keep that in mind. Trying to go over all the other podcasts. Dennis Cowie, his Roundhouse Wrestling podcast, that should be dropping again soon. I understand he had some technical issues tonight, which delayed his stream. So hopefully we can get that up. Just all of the great content. There's so many people right now that are producing content at Cage Side, whether it's in official capacity or whether it's just as fans doing podcasts like this one. You know, if you have an interest in wrestling and you want to get active in talking about it, looking for an outlet, you want to join the podcasting world, definitely reach out. That's what I did. That's how I got the Queen City Express up and rolling. It's been a tremendous success here in its first week. Don't be afraid to take a chance. It's a great time to be a wrestling fan. There's a little bit of something for everybody. Please join us in the nightly threads and the daily threads at Cage Side Seats. If you don't already do so, it's a great discussion. You don't have to worry about some of the hangups that you would get at other wrestling websites. A great group of people. The guys and gals over there are just tremendous folk. They're good people, so you'll have a good time. Very much looking forward to the future of the Queen City Express podcast. Again, we will be having a full WrestleMania rundown Wednesday afternoon. Should be a live stream. Not 100% sure on the time, so keep it tuned to Cage Side Seats for that. We'll hopefully get that information out to you. A Man of 1,000 Words fan post series will conclude its two-part special on the greatest WrestleMania matches that never were this coming Wednesday as well. So it'll be a busy day Wednesday. Final preparations. Have not decided if I will be doing anything at New Orleans yet at the site of WrestleMania. Who knows? Just depends on how adventurous we get. Don't know if I'll be taking the laptop with me or not to record anything. Definitely will be back the week after, guesting on some podcasts talking about it. So looking forward to that. If any extra content drops this week, I'll be sure to let you know. Thank you again to everyone that subscribed. Thank you to everyone that's been supporting the podcast. I want to thank you for tuning in to the very first episode of The Last Call. This is the last call for Saturday night. Happy Easter to all who celebrate. I hope you have a wonderful, blessed holiday. And for those who don't, well, it's WrestleMania week officially. It is finally here, guys. It is time to celebrate. Best time of the year for a wrestling fan. Best time of year for a sports fan. God bless you, Boston Red Sox. Thanks for taking a few years off my life with that opening day albatross of suck. Hopefully they can turn it around. I know David Price did a good job getting us back to 500. We'll be talking a little bit of sports here, too, in the last call, if you couldn't guess. God bless you guys. Enjoy Easter. Happy holiday to everyone that celebrates. And look forward to seeing you in the nightlies and the dailies. Thanks and take care. This is Biff Kensington for the last call of the Queen City Express. Take care, guys.